Oof, oof, oof.
Welcome to the Freedom to Thrive, a podcast that dives deep into the fight for abolition, reimagines justice, and explores the intersection of immigration and the criminal legal system, starting with this series that we call Crimmigration, brought to you by Freedom to Thrive, an organization here to challenge the status quo, dismantle oppressive systems, and build a world where our communities can truly thrive. Each episode in the series, we sit down with powerful voices from organizers to activists, community leaders, and allies who are leading the charge for change. We'll unpack the real impact of our current systems, discuss the importance of abolition, and share the tools, strategies needed to organize for a more just future. Whether you're new to this movement or a seasoned advocate, the space is for you. Our work is led and informed by people directly impacted by the immigration or prison system, who have been or have had loved ones deported or locked up. Their experiences with crimmigration is also impacted by the intersections of race, gender, housing, education, and labor. Join us to decriminalize, reparate, and liberate our communities. This is Freedom to Thrive. Let's get started.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's definitely afternoon for me here in the West Coast.
You just hit afternoon.
Yes. Well, I just hit noon, and now we're 5 minutes after.
Noon.
So it's afternoon.
Yeah.
Man, we just started this show, and you're already on my John.
Whoa. Definitely not child appropriate, but glad we having fun. All right. So what are we talking about today? Hi, Kay.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm here.
No worries. So, Siva, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so, welcome to the show, the podcast. Today we are actually going to be doing a roundtable discussion with ours truly, us, your hosts. Pretty much today is part one of what we want to lead into when we actually have our guests for our next episode. Next episode is going to be a part two on this topic with some great speakers that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But today we are actually on the topic of the immigration bond industry in the U.S. Basically, the immigration bond industry in the U.S. is a multi-million-dollar sector, which is tied to the detention and release of immigrants. Held by Immigration Custom Enforcement, better known as ICE, that we'd like to melt. The system resembles the criminal bail bond industry, but with fewer regulations and less transparency. So let's talk about the breakdown of this system and who profits. That'll be the spin of our conversation today. Who's going to take us off?
Okay.
Wait, hold up. I think we should do. Sorry, Kate. I think we should do a little bit of a disclaimer, right, Karim?
Disclaimers welcome. Hit it, Karim.
We are informed individuals, but this is not legal advice. Do not construe what we're saying as legal advice. This is the work that we do. This is our assessments from our own personal experiences in the work that we do to help folks in the community, and the information that we do receive from lawyers and paralegals and people actively organizing against this, but this is not to be construed as legal advice. Disclaimer?
Absolutely. Perfect disclaimer. And to follow that up, at the end of our show, we're going to go over some regional resources where if you do find yourself in need of urgency, rapid response help, and you're being affected by these Gestapo-like systems that are advancing on our communities, we'll have some resources below that are regionally adept and available for you. Cool. You want to lead us, Kay?
Sure, why not? So I can jump in by talking about private bond companies. Talk about Libre by Nexus and similar intermediaries. So they charge immigrants and their families large upfront fees, often like 20 to 30% of the bond amount. And then also some monthly fees as well for GPS monitors or ankle check-ins. Did y'all have any thoughts on that or want to add anything?
I'm gonna just add a little bit. So typically in criminal proceedings, like regular court and detention, bond is usually 10%. So when you look at this practice, it's 20 or 30% for migrants whose family, in most cases aren't fully assimilated to the U.S. and have to work twice hard to, not that everybody's not working hard, but this is definitely a form of extortion, to say the least.
Can I interject here, por favor? So I'm a little bit confused because can you explain what immigration bond is? And what's the difference between immigration bond and regular bond? And how was this created? Like, is this like a form of punishment? Is this a form of surveillance? What is this thing?
Well, and I'm gonna let Seema catch some of this too, but in the context of bond, when you get locked up or in court proceedings, there's usually some type of bond. When you are in civil or criminal proceedings, there is some type of bond depending on what the case at hand is. I don't want to dig too much into the law on how bond works, but in the immigration context, is basically you're in jail, just like in criminal proceedings. You have been detained or incarcerated, even though they say it's not punitive, it is allegedly civil. In order to get out, the judge or ICE can sometimes set a bond, similar to a criminal proceeding, and you will have to pay that. Usually, the amounts can be pretty high. It can be $50,000. I don't see a lot of IJs try to give out a crazy amount. I've never seen like $1 million bond, but those amounts are requiring 30%. So 30% of a $50,000 bond would be about what, 15,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Jesus Christ, that already sounds to me financially punitive to somebody who's already in a very desperate situation, trying to get out and not being inside. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Goes.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, go ahead, Simo.
No, run it, bro.
No, I was just saying, like, as a practice, just to make a comparison from being incarcerated and going into immigration detention, even the commissary prices for detainees for the same products were probably in some cases 5 to 10 times higher than it would be for incarcerated individuals.
Right. And oftentimes, like, the bond process has like multiple stages to it. Obviously, there's a bond hearing. Judge decides, if the bond is appropriate and what the amount is going to be. They have to prove their eligibility, that they're not a flight risk or danger to public safety. And oftentimes, very trivial things are used against a lot of immigrants coming into this stuff for bond hearings and detention. That remove that eligibility based on that judge's discretion. And also, a lot of the times they won't have the assets to secure a bond release, basically a sense of sponsorship towards a payment. Is very difficult to find. So again, additional hurdles, but this part and parcel of the process for the bond. If a person's released from or technically the person, if bond is posted, then the person is ordered released from detention promptly, immediately after. Good thing. And upon the case completion, the bond can actually be returned. But the immigration case also has to wrap for that bond to completely be returned. Otherwise, the length of the proceeding for the immigration process is an obligation to withhold the bond. So yeah, stuff like that, man. It's crazy.
I was a little bit I guess concerned when Kay shared that some of these companies have been accused in the past, and actually I was doing a quick search, and there's been a lot of reporting about how these companies behave in a predatory manner, especially to immigrants. Libre alone makes about $50 million plus a year. And this is like nothing compared to some of the other big players. And I don't see the motivation for actually helping people get out of detention facilities if one of the goals for these corporations is to maximize their profits, right?
Right. And so Libre is actually, I mean, and it actually comes into like, okay, Libre kind of set a precedent for others to operate in the exact same way, and they're somewhat of an example and a victim of their own demise at the same time, because even though Libre is not around, a lot of the practices still exist. And I actually just looked at that. Part of their demise was the fact that in 2024, a judgment was a federal judge ordered Libre by Nexus and all its executives to pay $811 million for their predatory practices. And a lot of these predatory practices included things like bond misrepresentation, deceptive contracts, GPS ankle monitors, which is a huge abuse in the industry. Just in the prison industrial complex, it's more of a pipeline than a prevention. False threats, no legal services, and with the latter, like while presenting itself as a provider of like what they like to use social service terms like wraparound services.
Mm-hmm.
So while they would present itself as a provider of like these types of holistic wraparound services that are a bonus of using its services in the bond industry, like legal aid, the company only referred or offered referrals and often no legal assistance at all. So they face some stiff penalties, but again, like they set a pattern for the practice to actually permeate.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
You got something to say, Edwin?
No, go ahead. I
was going to ask, so with them having to face these penalties, have things shifted at all as far as like folks having to navigate like these private bond companies, or are things worse?
I would say, as Simon said, it gave the blueprint for other companies to go and do the same things. And what, this is America. So in capitalism, you just follow the leader till you get caught. So everybody just, some of these executives probably went and started their own bond companies, or partner with other companies. If we do the tracking, we can probably definitely say some are still in the business somehow because it's lucrative. And they probably also own shares in immigration detention facilities like Core Civic or Geo, who house a lot of ICE detainees that have the ICE contracts. So for folks like Core Civic or Geo, if you can't pay the bond, what happens? You stay in jail. you stay detained for the duration of your case. Typically, cases are allegedly supposed to take 6 months, but folks like myself, I did 5 years in ICE custody. I've known several individuals that have done more time in ICE custody than myself. So that's also not an issue for them because they get paid for the bed space. And imagine the commissary and all the other contracts. And just like in Etowah County, the sheriff was stole 750,000 from the funds. So this is big business. It's not, a coincidence that the practice is running the way it is. And if you look at what Trump is doing or attempting to do, he is basically structuring these like products and services and raising the application fees, raising the cost of bond, raising everything is just business, giving out down to who he's giving the contracts. And that's what we should also be aware of, what the big businesses are doing and how we can hold them accountable for violation of human rights.
I was just looking at the revenue for both Geo and Core Civic. Geo Group, only per ICE related contracts, it's between 900 million, $1 billion. And Core Civic is between 500 and $600 million. And I'm thinking, if I were in a detention facility, right, I'm already exasperated about trying to get out because I want to be able to stay here with my family. I want to be able to, provide for myself and my family. But so I'm trying to navigate the legality of all that, trying to get out of detention and possibly deportation, especially during these times when they're trying to do everything expedited and we'll take your Dow, ask questions later kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what's the financial impact? What would be the financial impact to me and my family? That would be huge.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, you've been kidnapped. Pay the ransom. That's literally what it is. They kidnap you and tell somebody to pay the ransom, and family members have to scramble to borrow money to get other family members. Fortunately, for the work that we do, we can do fundraising and get community support to assist folks. But a lot of that, to be frank, even though I'm Kareem, this is literally some of the most support we've seen for folks detained. For a lot of these resources didn't exist for us in this capacity in the abundance 8 years ago, 10 years ago. So a lot of people, suffered because there wasn't so much awareness about what was going on.
Right. So how do you navigate all this? How do you navigate, especially if you're still in shock, even like today, like the way they take you in? I mean, we've seen it over and over and over on the news. Our friends are going out and recording all these incidents where force and violence is, used to grab people that are going to drop off their kids in school, that are going to work, that are, going to, their court, going through their court cases in the court system. How do you navigate all this?
Well, yeah, it's impossible. I mean, I think that's one of the issues that I was running into. We have two families who were victimized and attacked by what I like to term Gestapo forces and ICE. Both were dads on Monday, respectively, and Tuesday, that were either on their way or taking their kids or just wrapped up taking their kids to school when they were, and then on their way to work when they were both intercepted and pulled out their vehicles by ICE and sent to the Tacoma Northwest Detention Center. That's a different subject. Small tangent. They have their own immigration courts inside there. So 97% rejection rating when it comes to even just bond out, the opportunity to bond. The opportunity is not even presented for bond to them in the first place. But outside of that, I digress. What happens is that with these families, they have no idea or understanding of how they should have prepared even for this. And part of that we'll also talk about at the end of the show with the resources that we have. But essentially, there's no way to kind of prepare for this. There's not really much of an opportunity to look at ways to get them out quick enough. We tend to try to have to at least react with something like a habeas petition, a window of less than 2 hours. The moment they get intercepted, the clock begins, the countdown begins to try and scramble for any kind of petition for release before they get packaged up and sent out of state of Oregon to the state of Washington, to the detention center where the immigration process, the judges, and the entire system that's tied into that facility, inside that facility, is virtually untouchable and unnavigable. So, yeah, there's an impossibility that lies, and just even the possible opportunity to discuss bond is so minimal that even if the opportunity comes up, you're literally asking people who are economically disenfranchised in the first place, that are struggling around the poverty line, to come up with something as far as assets to even allow bond and allow release to occur. Those 3% in the Tacoma North Detention Center that are given the opportunity to bond, 90% of the time still cannot. So, yeah, it's there's some kind of intentional affliction that takes place, and don't even think that this is a partisan issue. A lot of these were based on systems that were already in place before the current administration came in as part two.
Yeah. I want to get to the question of like the memo that ICE publicized on July 8th of this year, related to all this, but which doesn't quite match with what we're talking about, because there is a financial motivation for the corporation, but not only to them, there's also apparently huge Wall Street investors that, are shareholders, for instance, in both Geo Group and Core Civic. So there's big investor Wall Street money, also tied to this industry. So they need all these pieces in order for the industry to work. And right now they're making money. I mean, with the recent expansion of basically DHS and ICE budget, they're gonna have ICE contracts, massively. So I don't understand. Number one, what is the gist of the July 8th memo? And if I understand it correctly, it basically says if you enter without inspection, then you no longer qualify for immigration bond. But that counters to their ability to have more people in detention who could possibly get immigration bond and enter that system. So can you break that down for me? I think there's obviously there's a huge financial motivation by different players, different actors. So I'm not longer thinking, what they say publicly, oh, this is about getting rid of the country from criminals. And I don't really like using that. I'm just, for the sake of the conversation, putting it in the table. But if you really look from a different angle, that's more about money than anything else. But anyway.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going to segue that into the Crimmigration corner, because the July 8th directly deals with the recent BIA decision. As you can see, new law was passed on July 8th, changing some of the immigration policies and directives. And the BIA, which is a part and parcel of DHS and ICE, which is the same agency, made a decision putting judges on notice that people who enter the country without inspection aren't eligible for bond. The judge has no discretion. The judge cannot hear it. Go ahead, Timo.
Hold up. So, all right. For anybody listening, um, uh, Karim, are you? So you're doing your you're going to answer that with your Crimmigration Corner right now.
Yeah, because it's basically the same thing.
All right, for those of you guys listening, Crimmigration Corner, it is well, our boy's name is Karim, but we also have a process in which we speak about this, which is called Crimmigration. So we kind of hybridize the name, but it's a segment that we bring up usually after our main segment that we start the show off with, where Karim will do a case highlight. So I think it's a great opportunity. Karim, run with the case highlight to answer this question.
Okay,
Wait. Sorry to keep interrupting you, but there's a lot of people that probably never heard of the term EWI, entering without inspection.
Yes.
Can you break it down for people who are listening, watching, please?
Okay, so that's a part of the case. So EWI itself, right, is entry without inspection, means that allegedly an individual did not enter at a port of entry and wasn't inspected, meaning that when you came through the airport or you came across the border or whatever it is that they're saying that you weren't inspected. However, that just because you are charged with something doesn't mean that is a guarantee. And again, that's not legal advice. But let's say, for instance, you came here as a child through the airport, right? But say you came onto somebody else's passport, right? Which is some of what happens, or some people come through different ports of entry, come through the border in a car or anything, and you were waved through. That is actually considered inspection. What they're saying is we don't have any document of your entry into the country. So, and the burden is on you to find those documents. So passports, travel information, affidavits from family members, when you arrive, what schools you went to, those are the pieces of information that you will need to prove that you entered with inspection, that you came to the U.S. at a specific airport, at a border crossing, at when a boat docked in Miami, just pretty much whatever you can find to prove that you enter with inspection. So what this policy from July 8th and what the BIA decision does is it takes everybody that entered the country allegedly without inspection, no matter if it was 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, and say that you're under mandatory detention and an immigration judge has no authority to release you on bond. So that would, also what it does, it puts a lot of pressure on the federal courts now to have a lot of habeas petitions be answered, right? So now, since you can't get bond from an immigration judge, you now have to go through a federal district court and request a bond hearing. That is the only court that can order an immigration judge to give you a bond hearing, because they're going to basically knock this 235 B down, which is a subsection, and I don't really want to get into the subsections of the INA because I don't want to get too much legalese. But basically what it says is this is the type of custody that you're under, and a judge cannot say anything. And back to what Simab was saying earlier about bond, I do also want to inform folks that, yes, there is parole, right? But it's at ICE's discretion. Your release now is solely at ICE discretion under this policy. Everybody doesn't fall into the EWI category. Some people fall into the overstayed visas. Some people had green cards and they violated the terms of green card by having criminal contact or being arrested. So you violated the terms, and that's why they're putting you in removal proceedings. However, if you enter the country and nobody knows how you got here, you have to start getting documentation. So for folks that have that experience, or kids that, like the rapper 21 Savage, right? He from Atlanta. He didn't know when he got here, how he got here, or any of this, right? So he came here as a child. He thought he was American. So at some point, nobody know how he entered the country. And when he was charged with something, he was placed in a removal proceedings. So this entire time he thought he was English, and I don't know the full details of this case, so I don't want to speak too much on it. But that's one of the issues. You have kids that have been here their entire lives and don't have the information on entry. Parents could have died. Parents didn't tell them the information, and now they're being held without a ransom. Right? They've been kidnapped and basically held without a ransom or a bond, if you want to call it that, at this stage. And that's the new policy. But it's really like my interpretation of all that's going on. One, it's business, right? For them, it makes good business sense. It's just not good human sense. So what's happening is it's going to create a backlog, right? The backlog that this administration creates in immigration proceedings is, notable.
Backlog in due process proceedings, right?
Backlog just overall, right? Backlog in the firing of judges, right? If you have less judges and more cases, obviously you have to schedule them out further, right? And because of that, there was obviously going to be more due process violations along with that. But now you're implementing.
May I chime in? And if your case is not being processed, it's not going through the motion, so to speak, the more time you spend at a detention facility, the more the money that the government has to pay for the private contractor to keep that person in their detention facilities. So again, there's a profit motive. It's a huge profit motive to make sure that detainees, are not liberated, are not released.
The way you said that actually rhymes, because there's a rhyme that goes with detainees and Dick Cheney, right? So,
oh Lord,
Love it.
So Dick Cheney is
I love it, but I hate it.
One of the owners of Geo Group, one of the founding members, if I'm not mistaken. And then also there is Core Civic, which I believe is like some ex-CIA or military backing. So this is the government setting up their own corporations, predicting that immigration enforcement will be the new business. So when you see the scale back on the criminal justice side, quote unquote reform, it's that we've replaced the bodies of the citizens with migrants, and what we're doing is writing checks to ourselves. We're virtually saying, we're in the system, we're in the pipeline, we're just cutting checks. And if you go look at, who the owners are, who the shareholders are, they've predicted this a long time ago. They made the shift from federal prison to immigration or state prison at a high level, starting as early as I think 2008, and then the shift just continued to happen, and it just mass construction of new facilities, reopening of old jails that weren't fit for most humans to be just reopened for migrants. And we see the effects of that. Something that I also wanted to say earlier too is like, how do you navigate this? How do you deal with this? Just from a mental health standpoint, and it's rough on folks. It's definitely rough on folks. To kind of go through it, you have to tap into insanity, right? To deal with that. The people who are sane suffer the most. The insane have to actually kind of like find all the different coping mechanisms to laugh and to joke and to get through the situation and accept, the harshness of what they're experiencing. So a lot of times that's why, there is a suicide rate in this quote unquote civil detention, because, you have no release date. You have guaranteed separation from family or fear of returning to a country where you're already in danger. So it's between a rock and a hard place. Actually, ICE tells you can go home. You can get out whenever you want, right? It's just not in the U.S. So if you want to get out and your option is literally, I have to take my chances with death versus sit here and suffer for, no real reason. You have people in immigration detention that, are doing more time than people who actually commit crimes. And I'm not, and I don't want to say what the border policies and the laws are, but you're talking about physically entering and doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years for entering the country.
Okay, this is terrible.
It's dog. I mean, it is kind of depressing and disappointing, but it's where we are. And I think the importance of knowing where we're at right now is the fight to get out of it. And if we were able to maintain knowledge of and set precedents, we can, when the tides can shift, we can take ownership of processes. We can force legislators to create more protections that are harder to reverse.
The other thing that is this makes me think about, I mean, there's a lot that we could go much, much deeper into. What's the role of government, like in terms of oversight, right? Is it the same as it happens in the regular criminal justice system? Apparently it's not, because it sounds like they're just doing whatever the hell they want. I've also seen that there's law firms and bond services that actually bundle, you know, their legal representation with their ability to connect with bond companies to, you know, uh, reach clients. Like there's everybody's out there to try to get some money, and that's disturbing. Um, and so I still think that there's much deeper that we could go into about who's making money. But what about people who are on the inside? What's happening? I mean, what do we know? What have we heard? What have you experienced? When people are on the inside. And the good thing is, and I want to reiterate what Sima was saying earlier, that we're gonna share some resources towards the end of this episode. But there are people who are trying to change the system. But in the meantime, it's important to at least put a spotlight on this predatory industry.
Yeah, for the folks on the inside, just hearing the news of this is discouraging for a lot of folks, as you can imagine, to hear that there is no more bond for people who fall into particular categories. They're very fearful. There's a lot of fear mongering just by this being blown up on the news. This is being widely reported, and folks hear it, and they hear about the alligator Alcatrazes or the different facilities and the approach. So if you don't know the law or have, a lot of folks don't have the resources or have the legal information, and that's why Freedom to Thrive is working on the toolkit with Harvard to give folks the resources and the ability to do participatory defense. But it's a major issue when, like myself, I've probably had, like, I was EWE. I had 6 bond hearings, right? But I had to fight tooth and nail. I was told that I have no liberty interest in the United States. That those are, just like literally being the ruling, right? That I have no liberty. Like, that was a ruling that I have no liberty interest in the United States. Fighting for those things, kind of knowing the law, navigating the law a little bit, and not letting the noise affect you, and also try to keep other folks hopeful while they're going through it, because you can also imagine people are telling their attorneys, like, I don't want to fight my case anymore. There is no bond. I no longer want to fight my case. I want to be deported. I'll take my chances. And sometimes it's literally deport me, and for some folks it's come right back. So that's like a bailout, right? But then now you open yourself to a reentry charge, right? And then the cycle continues. Now you go to the federal prison, then you come back to ICE, and then you go through these things, because you're not coming back to just hang out on the corner. You're coming to be with your family and to be, what you build over time. So it's definitely a difficult thing for folks to be in there and hear this news and lose hope. I could imagine how many clients for folks or organizations supporting people who have just given up. Like, what is the hope? And they're not aware that the federal courts already kind of like knocked a lot of these issues down. The issue that the BIA's 235B it's already been knocked down on the Jennings, and when we do part 2, I'm going to have Malcolm and Jose break down, what legal strategies and habeas and precedents that already exist to counteract this new ruling. But the purpose is to litigate. When the BIA makes this ruling, they know that somebody has to argue it now, right? Somebody has to argue. They have to argue with the BIA. They have to argue with the circuit. They have to argue with the district courts, then probably eventually the Supreme Court. So this is something that's going to take years.
And if I may, sorry, I'm really interested in this topic because I had a relative that went through that a couple of years ago. I'm interested because, there's the notion for some attorneys, immigration attorneys who are inexperienced, and I've seen this as an organizer over the course of my years doing immigrant rights organizing, that they just go through the motions. Okay, even sometimes I've seen them pressure their clients to sign for voluntary departure. Oh, there's no more immigration bond. They want to go in further. They want to move on to the next case. So you immediately become just, one more number, one more thing for them. But I think what's fascinating to me is the organizing aspect of people who are impacted, who say, no, I need to fight and continue to fight despite the roadblocks. And I think that's an important thing for people to know, that and just, a bit of a promotion for the next episode. We're going to have two very, very important guests who are going to speak to the challenges to this new policy, but also from a different perspective, not from like the expert immigration lawyers or the legality of things, but more from the organizing perspective that, you don't give up. You keep fighting. You may not see the result, but there's someone else who's going to join the fight. There's someone else who's going to say, hey, wait a minute. If you were able to succeed, teach me how to do that too. Right. And I think we should encourage more of that, especially right now.
You have to. It's literally not enough lawyers, organizers,
right.
Just anybody with capacity to go around. Everybody's overworked, and in some cases underpaid, and it's just too much. Like on an emotional level, not being able to help folks that call out for help can take toll on individuals that actually are passionate about this work. So, and not organization from the top telling you, well, we don't have capacity, we can't take on these cases, and these cases are usually taken on by a region. And that was an issue in New York a while back, where once somebody was transferred out of New York, the legal team that had your case, because the funding was only for while you were in New York, had to drop you. So that also changed. So that's a good thing. But in Atlanta, they don't even have pro bono services for immigration detention. There's no government funding for that. So
what? Wait, Atlanta has no pro bono services
for immigration. It's not like New York.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And these are systems that existed far before we started blaming this side of the aisle.
Yeah. My stance on that. It's a 1-2 punch. Somebody lays the foundation and somebody comes in and plays the bad guy.
Amen.
The infrastructure, has been built.
I mean, this is one of the things that why Bush and Obama were criticized for, right? They're laying the foundation for all these things to basically be abused by the current administration and amplified, right?
Think about DACA for a second, right? So when DACA and DAPA came out, there was a large number of undocumented immigrant families in the country. But because this benefit came about and it didn't guarantee anything, it just gave you for a period of time for 2 years. Think about the families in a household that got on the radar because of DACA. So you might have one recipient in the household, but you have a family of 5 or 6 undocumented individuals within that same household. So they're able to aggregate that information and basically make a map to target and do their enforcement.
Yeah.
So it's
which is what's happening right now, actually.
Yeah, that's the game.
Yeah. Well, Killer Mike said just another talking head telling lies on teleprompters. So.
Yep. But I think it's time for of the month.
Man,
What's that?
So of the month is a segment that we usually run. It's a good segue because I feel stressful, and I feel like this one is going to allow me to get some stress off my chest, or hopefully our collective chest, because the of the month is a series that we usually run that'll highlight something of the month that's significant, that whether I find in our collective souls to be significant to present for that moment, and it could be someone that we're calling out, an issue that we want to give big ups to and highlight, form of joy that can spark something, a major movement. But this time right now, I think, it'd be kind of fitting. And today's of the month is actually a word, and it's defining a word, sadism. Yes, you heard that. Today's of the month is a word, and it's sadism. Full disclosure, this today is born out of our collective distress and anger over our current politics on both sides of the aisle.
Yep.
And the hurt and pain being inflicted on some very, very loved ones in communities that belong to you and I. Sadism is more than just being mean. It's when someone takes pleasure in hurting others. It's when cruelty is not an accident, but the actual goal. And when we look at Donald Trump, this word hits hard. He doesn't just insult people for no reason. He enjoys it. He feeds off mocking Black, brown, indigenous communities, immigrants, women, people with disabilities, even children. And his crowd cheers him on. That's sadism. Cruelty as entertainment, cruelty as power. But it's not just about him. It's about the people who empower him, the politicians who defend his every word, the crowds who laugh at his hate and with it, and the officers who carry out policies designed to break and tear and shred families apart. ICE agents separating children from their parents. That's not just doing a job. That's enforcing cruelty with a uniform and a paycheck. History shows us something. Those that work forces are the same that burn crosses. God bless Rage Against the Machine. Different uniforms, same hate. This pattern is the ugly side of America. It's domination, fear, power built on suffering. Sadism doesn't just disappear. It puts on a new mask in this country. And if we don't call it what it is, if we shrug it off and call it politics or just the way things are, then we become part of the problem, because silence is violence. And silence leading to violence lets cruelty grow. So naming it is resistance. Naming it is the first steps towards breaking it. That's my rant. That's my collective exhale for all of us. How y'all feel about that one?
I really like that you naming it is resistance. I think that's super important to really talk about, especially when thinking about I don't know, just like the things that we're going through. I feel like being able to like name the experiences, honor like how you feel and how we also collectively feel, and can also support in us like finding, I guess, finding solutions and figuring out how we can get to from point A to point B.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the power of calling it what it is, you know. And when you see evils, you really have to just say, not talk about it in terms at which they want to present it. They love utilizing terms that we create, liquidating it and diluting it, and whatnot. Now woke is a term that's used as a pejorative. Crazy enough, but yeah, appreciate it. That was our of the month, and
I want to add.
um,
I wanted to add that in the next 3 years or so, folks will be running back to another individual or party to look for comfort. But while this one is the sadist, the other one is the vile people that laid a foundation for that, and we have to have the same energy and the same work. We can't rest when it's time for that shift, because a lot of this work, if we didn't let the other administration, continue to knock down some of the bridges that we built during the first Trump term, you know, it's we wouldn't be here in some of these instances right now. We would have possibly TPS, if Biden didn't pull from those litigations, a lot of things that occurred. So definitely, Vile should definitely be somewhere in off the month and come up, same amount of letters and exact same letters as evil. So because one of them, smiles and holds your hand while they're actually doing it, so that's definitely a topic to talk about, to introduce and show how these two entities work together.
So wouldn't you say
Yeah.
they're both like just one and the same instead of two different things?
Well, the sadist, as he said, is having this joy, right? The sadist even, mock Charlie Kirk for, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm building my ball. Yeah, that's how down I'm about his death, right? So I'm over here building my ballroom that couldn't get, that type of thing. So it's that, but then there's the compassionate, old man friendly, the smooth talking over Obama, the political talk and the feeling of we're in this together and we're for the people, right? While they lay the foundations for these things to happen to the people. Like they're literally shaking your hand and going into the back room and say, okay, this is how we're going to execute this. And we're just going to smile at them while while we're going to throw them off the plank, so that is definitely kind of lulling the people into the hands of the sadists, like shepherding the people into the hands of the sadists. So it's just like, yeah, like that's the one. That's the one that sticks it for me. So definitely got to talk about those vile individuals too.
We also got to talk about organizing, man.
Yeah.
We got to talk about,
resources,
amplifying what, some of what you've been doing, and just trying to give people tools to fight for the liberation. Don't forget, in the next episode, part 2 of this issue, Immigration Bond, we're going to have 2 amazing guests talk about it. Hopefully dig deeper into the, the profit making aspect, but also hopefully a lot more, and, about the organizing side. We also want
how
to
to
share
break the
with you,
system.
yes, want to share some resources. On the screen, you'll see information website for the National Bail Fund Network that actually supports both bond and the criminal justice system and immigration bond. They have a listing of, who does that, state by state here in the U.S. And I think we also got information, and maybe Sima, you want to describe more about them, Equity Corps of Oregon.
Yeah. So just kind of jumping into some resources over here. We have in Boston, we have Luce Immigrant Justice of Massachusetts Network. You can visit them at lucemass.org, Luce mass, mass.org. We also have Beyond Bond and Legal Defense Fund, which is beyondbondboston.org. Over here for my hood, Portland, we have Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition, which is pircoregon.org. Immigrant communities who need a hotline are facing an urgent situation, whether a loved one is being attacked by these masked Gestapo agents. Hotline is 888-622-1510. Also, I really want to highlight Equity Corps of Oregon. Equity Corps of Oregon is huge. One of the most important things that immigrant communities can do is be prepared if you feel like there's any risk of being stripped away from your family or a loved one being stripped away from you. Making sure that these communities are reaching preemptively out to organizations like Equity Corps of Oregon. Their objective is to provide universal representation, which protects our communities by making sure that no individual faces the risk of deportation or exclusion without legal consultation. Yes, they'll provide it for you, and representation. Equity Corps of Oregon, also going by ECHO, they aim to end unjust and unfair deportations and civic inclusions by providing access to an attorney and support services. I had success referring families to them, therefore, expanding their ability and understanding around their civil liberties, even under undocumentation. So they aim to provide these services to every eligible Oregonian at risk of removal or civic exclusion on the account of immigration status. So people get in touch with Equity Corps of Oregon, organize and amplify their work for your communities, equitycorps.org. Also, they can be reached at 888-247-7292. New York, we have Families for Freedom. At familiesforfreedom.org, UndocuBlack Network, which is under justicepower.org. You'll find them under Project UndocuBlack in their website. You also have Clemency Coalition, which is clemencycoalitionny.org, and Immigration Defense Project. Also regionally in Los Angeles, for a lot of my peeps out there, you have National Day Laborers Organizing Network, which is NDLON, endalon.org. You also have CHIRLA, which is the Coalition for Human and Immigrant Rights, LA, CHIRLA.org. They can be reached at 213-201-37974 for legal representation and services. And for the Vietnamese communities in Orange County, we also have Viet Rise, which is VIET Rise, RISE.org. As we continue to wrap our shows, we want to be able to make sure that we're providing resources, and the list gets longer. And it could be a dominant factor towards wrapping this show up and provide these helpful places. We'll make sure that these will also be linked in the comments below, regardless of what platform you're listening to us on, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. And then finally, as was mentioned earlier, the National Bail Fund Network, which is at communityjusticeexchange.org. And you'll find in the website the directory for the National Bail Fund. Click on that tab. Our episode wrap. We're wrapped, guys, right?
That's a wrap.
Our episode wrap. We'd like to thank our guests, us. We held it down today. We were the main segment. I
want to say yes. This show was I was brought to you by coffee. Thanks for the coffee. It was a good sponsor.
And energy drinks.
And for that, we are out on time.
Absolutely. Next episode, currently planning. Thank you for watching, listening. Give us a like, subscribe, tell us about what you'd like to hear and from whom we should be talking to in our next episodes. You were going to say, Edwin?
Peace.
Blessings.
Deuces.